we're suggesting, if you could see this not as a pyramid, if you could see this as a road with or a bridge to the future going off into the distance, the far-flung point in the distance, and these are each steps on that bridge or steps on that path or that sidewalk or that highway to the future. We understand that we can realize ourselves as one in unity, without hierarchy, without betterness, without control or safety, without diminishing anyone else, nor raising ourselves above anyone else, and honoring all of our differences if we choose to. The paradox of that is that many of the reasons we don't choose to do that is because we're stuck in our habits, our beliefs, competition, unresolved trauma, judgments, victim, perpetrator, rescuer dynamics, narcissism, ego identity, seeing ourselves as separate than others, just the habit of traditional life, or focus on adaptive technologies as a supposed solution to global problems or to our current personal or family life problems. And so we would suggest that starting at the bottom of this path, a 12-step program, which there are 12-step programs to break alcohol or drug addiction or sex addiction or prejudice addiction or addiction to a Western lifestyle or materialism or conspicuous consumption. A 12-step program can break many addictions. So we're going to be talking about many different options for 12-step programs for us to integrate into the team of teams process and into the workshop models that we're developing in order to help break Western society free of its narcissism and addiction and taproot dynamics and tribal process, so that we can see and understand the pain and suffering of others, and so we can find it within ourselves to be motivated to transform our way of life and to help the rest of the world do the same successfully and in a equitable way. So the second step on this process is, once those addictions are broken, once we let go of the traditional dysfunctional, non-sustainable past, it's incumbent upon us to define some new collaborative life process for humanity. And that means understanding psychology, sociology, economics, politics, technology, and tribe, and how all of those, as well as these addictive dynamics that have formed them, are affecting climate change. And once that newly collaborative process has been defined, we've got to be motivated as a species to implement it on a consistent basis. And this is a transformational cycle that could take 100 years. Can you imagine being motivated to do anything for 100 years? Absolutely. Trauma too. So we must effect a quality of consciousness that transcends fast food results, short-term ego gratification, addictive dynamics of all kinds. And we can only do that successfully, collectively, together, collaboratively. So that means that we must define a new model of sustained motivation. Wanting is not adequate. Want is ego-driven. If someone says, well, I want to do that, they'll probably do whatever it is. And that said, quite often want operates from lack or ego or fear or desire for control or desire for more. And so just being motivated by our wants is not an adequate evolutionary dynamic or transformative dynamic or attainment of consciousness dynamic. So new models of collective motivation must be designed and implemented, and that will lead to a sustainable, healthy, collective, conscious, collaborative, species level potential. So everything starting on the left side here, everything we do now, everything that every individual in our world does, everything that every company does, everything that every nation does is now being time boxed. In the past, we could say, well, it doesn't matter whether we clear cut forests or pollute because there's no problem that's discernibly created by that. We'll just go eat something else or tear up something else or go fish in a different part of the ocean. And isn't the ocean limitless? So how could we ever run out of fish? Well, now we're running out of fish. So every single thing that we do from now on as a species, if we want to have our children live healthy, joyful lives, anywhere near as good as our lives have been, is time boxed. It's limited. We have to compress everything we do into a smaller amount of time, and we've got to do it better, faster, more efficiently, more intelligently, and more harmoniously with the ecosystem. And if we don't, we'll all collectively suffer for it. That's not a threat and it's not a problem. It's just a fact. Now, if we all collectively work together, we can all collectively prosper. We can all collectively enjoy. We can all collectively learn to love ourselves and each other. And we can all collectively learn to serve humanity and the natural world. And we can all collectively co-create a future. So, and that said, the pressure of time is now on us, where it has not been nearly so much as a species at a species level in the past. So attaining the capacity to be self-initiating, self-motivating, sovereignly self-motivating, sovereignly self-organizing, while simultaneously learning collectively and independently as individuals, it's now vital for us to learn to do that. You folks in the team of teams are learning to learn as a collective, as a transdisciplinary collective, as a team of teams. You're teaching each other, you're teaching, the teams are teaching each other, individuals within teams are teaching each other, and each of you as individuals are learning, and we're evolving collectively. This is a whole new paradigm for human process. You folks are the model, the prototype. You folks are the test bed for what will work and what won't, what can be of benefit and what can't, what will be acceptable to the population of this planet and what won't. So we suggest as the last item on the left side that avoiding draconian social policies and change management dynamics is vital. The Chinese chose to have a one-child rule a few years back so that families were only allowed to have one child. What that led to were a lot of children, young girl children at birth being killed or prior to their births because it was deemed safer and more economically effective for the family, the good of the family, to have a boy child. The Eskimos used to do that in long past. They would, if they had a girl child first, they would put the child out on the ice and put snow in her mouth because they believed that their family would survive better with a male child than a female. Well, now male and female are far more equal due to technology. We don't live so much in a brute force world anymore, and women's capacities are now recognized far more to be at least equal to men's. And so this process of trying to apply these forced top-down, government-driven, painful, and arguably abusive controls or rules on society in order to maintain the functionality of a nation, a culture, a people are hopefully recognized to not be optimal. The Chinese have now changed their rule to a 3-child rule because they were having mostly or far more male children born than female, and it started to make their population non-viable because of the imbalance. So you see the best laid plans of controlling governments often go awry. A democracy cannot function optimally with an uneducated population. That doesn't mean everyone's going to have the same education. It doesn't mean they're all going to agree. It does mean that they're going to be better informed as to the issues and their choices, and they'll be better informed as to how the government works and how they affect how the government works, how they vote, and how things unfold as a result of their votes and their free will choice processes day by day. So again, these free will choice opportunities based upon having been informed are vitally important. So what's the difference between the government suddenly saying no more plastic bottles ever, and if you do buy or sell or play with plastic bottles, we'll punish you in some as of yet undefined way? That is a non-transformational policy, if you know what we mean. If we were to say we're going to ban gasoline today around the world, gasoline and diesel use, if nobody used gasoline or diesel, it's likely that I guess perhaps half the population of our world would starve very rapidly. Does it make sense why it would break all the supply chains? There wouldn't be electricity for most of the populations. There would be no medicine to get to hospitals. Food would not get to the shelves of the grocery stores. And people would not be able to rapidly find seeds to go dig up their backyard and plant and get some vegetables grown before they died of starvation. And the electricity would not run the turbines that drove the water to give you fresh water in your home. So you see that is a very gross example of a non-transformational strategy. Transformational strategies might say, we have evaluated the effect of plastic bottles on the planet and what we can and cannot do. We have determined that they are likely to have this effect in this time frame. We have evaluated how important they are in day-to-day life, and we've determined that we have to use them. We have no other choice if we want to retain a stable society for the medical system, or for storing milk for children, or for necessary foodstuffs. And that said, we've determined that if we eliminated bottled beverages of all kinds, that and in juices, water, etc., anything that wasn't a staple, that would save us in some dramatic fashion from some terrible future climate change portion of the climate change calamity. So we can see the dominoes and we can mitigate some of it. And we're going to impact all of society all around the world in some detrimental way. And we're not going to do it in a way that is going to break the supply chains or keep us from being able to have food, or keep us from being able to have shelter or hold down a job. And we're going to turn that dial on every single product on the market in a gradual way. And by doing so, require, and while simultaneously funding organizations that create bottles out of mushrooms or bottles out of bamboo or something that's not plastic and doesn't pollute. And these must occur simultaneously. So drawing back on one thing and accelerating on another at the same time. So comprehensive transformational strategies that take into account of course, innumerable things: energy production, solutions production of all kinds, container production, waste disposal, and waste creation. A whole new transformational process must happen. And if it's not orchestrated, it's unlikely to just happen on its own. Meaning we can't get there just through a simple set of rules or policy changes. There must be rule and policy changes, and rule and policy changes do not bring with them the wisdom and discernment and understanding that education brings. There are many, many innumerable ways to define a transformational process for humanity, and absolutely it will be required to have government support and sanction and enforcement, and it can't be done only by government support and sanction and enforcement. If people don't understand, if they feel victimized, if they feel wronged, if they feel that they're losing their jobs without reason, if they can't understand the why of it, are they going to feel victimized, angry, judgmental? Are we likely to have more people on airplanes acting out negatively, more shootings, more violence, more terrorism, more perceptions of inequity due to lack of information, even if we put in place some very good policies and rules and simultaneous to incentivizing transformation and change? We're not suggesting this is the whole recipe. We are suggesting that if we don't collectively get together and collaboratively decide on what strategy we're going to affect as a world, that there are going to be innumerable people that try to fight the strategy or beat the rules or find a way around the regulations or cheat or manipulate the system or game the system by buying the decision-making power of government officials just because they can. Rules and regulations are not based on trust. They're based upon threat and punishment and sanction or fines and enforcement. And still, in spite of all the rules and regulations in our world, there are a lot of organizations and nations and individuals and groups, of course, that operate outside of those rules and regulations to the detriment of humanity. We're not trying to put everyone in a forced situation at all. We are suggesting that in our current mode of life process, human beings are operating non-collaboratively. They're operating from self-interest quite often, or from fear, or from tribal resonance, or from ego identity, or nationalism, or organizational, cultural intention, or motivations. The corporation that pays them tells them what to do, so to speak, so they go do it, even if it pollutes the world. This dynamic is not sustainable. A non-collaborative paradigm is not sustainable. If we don't have a way to deliver collaboration at scale, a system such as the social movement engine, if we don't have a system to deliver a venue and a process and a method and a technology infrastructure to support conscious collaboration, then collaboration is going to be ever more difficult to achieve. And it'll be more happenstance. It won't be methodical. It won't be standard. It won't have metrics to give people the opportunity to know when they're being more collaborative or not collaborative enough, or how to be more consciously collaborative. So on the right side, we need new models of trust. We've had rules and regulations because we don't trust. And that said, people operate from trust every day. You may not trust all your neighbors or all your friends. That said, you do trust some of your neighbors and some of your friends. And if you had a problem, you know who you would call, or you trust your family. trust on its own in its prior models and dynamics is not an adequate mechanism to build collaboration on. We must develop new models of trust that are based on factual information, shared understandings and values, and shared goals and strategies and approaches and intentions that are arrived at collectively. And then once we have those trust models in place, then we can utilize them to align ourselves and to break old habits and addictions. So everything that we do from this point on must optimally be, as a species, or the whole planet, every human being, must be synchronized, coordinated, more efficient, more effective, more organized, more aligned, and optimally continually motivated and resourced. That means logistics are key and core to transformation of our world. Logistical distribution of information, logistical distribution of energy, of resources of all kinds, and of transformational strategies and solutions.